Hello, my name is Brianna Barton, and I'll be discussing today 5 books of children's literature. These 5 books will include the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Twilight, New Moon, Matilda, and Peter Pan. The first book I'll discuss today is The Chronicles of Narnia. Here's a cover of The Chronicles of Narnia, as well as a poster behind me, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and its sequel, Prince Caspian. A summary of this book is, during a game of hide-and-seek, the youngest daughter, Lucy, discovers a wardrobe which transports her to the land of Narnia. Covered in snow, Narnia is full of weird creatures and wonderful creatures. Both are watched over by the evil White Witch. When all 4 of the children end up through the wardrobe, they discover it was meant to be, as 2 daughters of Eve and 2 sons of Adam will join the mighty lion, Aslan, to defeat the evil White Witch. The age range of this book is 8 to 12. Strengths are that it's an already accepted book of Christian theology, as well as its movie. The movie incorporates theological concepts into the story by C.S. Lewis. The idea of a strong family and perseverance is incorporated in the book. And then, in literary terms, the book incorporates animal fantasy, journey fantasy, magical fantasy, and epic heroic fantasy. A weakness of this book is that the sequel, Prince Caspian, does not uphold fan expectations in the movie. This leads to decreased fan base. The second book I'll talk about today is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Here is a look at Harry Potter. A summary of Harry Potter is that it is the tale of Harry Potter, an ordinary 11-year-old boy serving as a sort of slave for his aunt and uncle, who learn that he is actually a wizard and has been invited to attend the Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry is snatched away from his mundane existence by Hagrid, the groundskeeper for Hogwarts, and quickly is thrown into a world completely foreign to both him and the viewer. Famous for an incident that happened at his birth, Harry makes friends easily at his new school. He soon finds, however, that the wizarding world is far more dangerous for him than he ever would have imagined, and he quickly learns that not all wizards are ones to be trusted. The age range of this book is 9 to 12. The strengths are that it incorporates animal fantasy, journey fantasy, magical fantasy, and epic heroic fantasy. A weakness of Harry Potter is that it's actually under a great amount of controversy about whether Christians should read it due to the magical content. The third book I will talk about today is Twilight, New Moon. Here is a picture of Twilight, New Moon, and the movie. A summary of Twilight is that it's a modern-day love story of Romeo and Juliet. Bella Swan has always been a little bit different, and she's never really cared about fitting in with the trendy girls at high school. When her mother remarried and Bella chooses to live with her father in the little town of Forks, she meets Edward Cullen, and she thinks he's beautiful, and he's not like anything she's ever met. Here, she discovers that Edward is actually a vampire, and the whole story is about the unmanageable love and actually uncontrollable and very not appropriate love of a human and a vampire. The age range of this book is 13 to 19, and it definitely varies because I've seen young people and I've seen old people read this book. The strengths of this book are journey fantasy, animal fantasy, and supernatural fantasy. A weakness of this book is that it has mature sexual content, as well as it's more based on romance than any of the other books. The fourth book today is Matilda. Here's a picture of Matilda. It's lovely, I know. The summary of this book is that it's a story of a sweet, bright little girl named Matilda, who is the child of wondrous intelligence. Unfortunately, she is different from the rest of her family. Ignored at home all the time, Matilda escapes into a world of reading, where exercising her mind so much she develops telekinetic powers. She's sent off to school, headed by a cruel, hulky monster named Principal Trunchbull. Matilda needs all the help she can get, and amidst this darkness she finds a single warm hope of her teacher, Miss Honey, who helps her to develop her powers, and they begin a friendship. The age range of this book is 8 to 12. The strengths of Matilda are that it's a magical fantasy, it's heroic fantasy, and supernatural fantasy. A weakness of this book is that there are no sequels in this movie, and therefore also leads to decreased fan base. Peter Pan is the last story I will be talking about today. Here is an illustration of Peter Pan. Peter Pan is based upon a play created in 1904, the story about a boy named Peter Pan who refuses to grow up. The story begins in London nursery of Wendy, John, and Michael Darling, where 3 children are visited by Peter Pan. With the help of his tiny friend the fairy Tinkerbell, Peter takes the 3 children on a magical flight to Neverland. This enchanted island is home to Peter, Tink, the Lost Boys, Tiger Lily, and the scheming Captain Hook, whose life goal is to defeat Peter Pan. The age range of this book is 3 years old and older. The strengths of this book are animal fantasy, magical fantasy, supernatural fantasy, epic heroic fantasy, and journey fantasy. The weaknesses of this book are that it incorporates typical gender stereotyped roles for the characters. For instance, Wendy does not fight and acts as a motherly character for all the Lost Boys, including Peter Pan, when he eventually lets her, and she is constantly in a dress, and she never fights, and she's very passive. In conclusion, I will compare and contrast all these books. Harry Potter, The Chronicles of Narnia, Matilda, and Peter Pan are similar in that they all can be classified as magical, journey, and heroic fantasy, all in one. Twilight can be classified as epic, heroic fantasy, and journey fantasy as well, but not magical. Twilight is more of a supernatural fantasy because of the supernatural powers conveyed in the werewolves and vampires, aka Jacob versus Edward. Harry Potter, The Chronicles of Narnia, and Peter Pan are similar in that the main characters encounter a portal in which they journey between worlds. Overall, the 5 previously discussed books can all be considered under the fantasy genre. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.